In 2017, the McKinsey Global Institute estimated that as many as 375 million workers, or 14% of the global workforce, will have to switch occupations or acquire new skills by 2030 because of automation and artificial intelligence. COVID-19 has had a mixed impact on learning and development for the workplace. On the other hand, people have become doubly interested in upskilling and retraining so as to retain their jobs, and governments are encouraging this with funding and resources. On the other hand, 4 months into the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, companies are feeling the pinch, and L&D is often marked as an easy target. The interaction with digital technologies has shaped a new generation of people with distinctively different attitudes, qualifications, behaviors, and expectations. A great part, if not all, the work content has been digitalized. Given that all information today is either digital, has been digital, or could be digital, information work of employees more and more depends on digital tools and media. In consequence, a new set of technical as well as mental skills to systematically acquire, process, produce, and use information is needed.
COVID-19, which happened in Africa largely the beginning of this year, has really affected the workplace, I will begin by saying, because we are used to coming together in a central place and working. And now, because of the need for social distance and the need to protect ourselves, we have had to move away from the workplace and work remotely at home. So I would say the challenges that the workplace has been facing first is not a skill challenge, but an access challenge, where a person is required to work at home. So they will need access to a computer, they will need access to internet, which may or may not be available. So the first thing is organizations needed to enable their staff to be able to work from home, which sometimes is possible again because of the network. Some places you'll find there is ease in access to internet, so a person can be able to work properly, and other places there's no ease of access to the internet. At the place of work, most of the things may be done manually, because you have to come to work manually. If you're an accountant, for example, open your computer, work on your books. So some of those things that you do will be, say, stored in our environment, will be stored physically. But now when you're working remotely at home, you need to have access to the files, and then you need to be able to upload those files to a particular system so they are accessed by other people, maybe by your auditor and by the other people who are working in the various other places. So that will pose a challenge in terms of the systems that you're working with. So you have to be able to have a system that you can operate. You need a digital acumen to be able to work with certain platforms that are online based, as opposed to physical based platforms. Now, working more online as opposed to physical interactions, you have to spend more time being actively listening to a person. Say you're in a meeting, you have to engage more of your senses, because you have to be able to see the person and also read the feelings of the person, because when you're in a physical meeting, you can be able to see the person. So you can see their body language as well as listen to what they're saying. But in this case, since it's online, you have to engage yourself more. So you will realize that at the end of the day, you're having people who are really, really exhausted because they have used more of their mental capacity to do the same things that they were able to do in a short time earlier during a physical meeting. So the skill here needed will be more active listening skills and more active engagement. And following through with that, since now you're having more of an online engagement, there's a requirement of the person to be able to do clear follow-up, so that once you have an online meeting, can somebody sit down, take the notes and distribute them, say on email or on the platform which you're using, so that other people can be able to access that and also follow through with the actions that are required. The other thing would be the technical skills required, because we saw a total movement of, previously we had very few providers of online systems, but now we've seen Teams coming up, we've seen Zoom coming up. These are systems that we quickly had to learn how to use, and teach our people how to use, because that was going to be the main mode of operation. And again, securing this system so that the data that you pass through the systems is secure.
From a COVID-19 perspective, the labor-intensive sectors are really facing challenges because, as you have seen, we seem to be all going digital. We are meeting on digital platforms. We are talking on the phone a lot. We are hardly having any physical meetings. So you find that people who are trained in sectors that require them to actually get into contact with the client are suffering. I'll give you an example. A waiter or a waitress in a hotel cannot serve you digitally. There are jobs such as development of mobile apps. Now, the downside of it is that there's a lot of jobs that will end up being taken away. One of them is conferencing, where you used to have huge congresses of 1,000 people. You can now hold them digitally from your home. Jobs in the airline industry will suffer because people cannot travel. Jobs in hotels will suffer because people are not meeting in hotels. Office buildings where you had caretakers and you had people to look after. So you'll find that some of these jobs will be taken away by the development, both COVID and the development of the digital platforms. You might require soft skills in either medicine or a bit of the science world, either a paramedic or a nurse or something like that. We've seen in our industry, because we always had a situation where we had an in-house nurse all the time, because we're dealing with so many people. So we've seen in our industry the ability to comply with the protocols was very, very high. You know, we had the high ability to comply. In fact, we are the ones who contributed most to the protocols because we already had some of these things in place. It's only that they were just not to the extent of alcohol-based sanitizers. I mean, we had disinfectants, we had hand wash basins every time one went into the kitchen, out of the kitchen. So we are seeing ourselves training people to respond from a scientific point of view. So that's one skill that will probably be needed going forward because it will not be just about this pandemic. It will be about preparedness for the next crisis that may come, that is a medical crisis. On merchandising, for example, and marketing, you find that everything now is digital. While in the old traditional way of shopping, you had to go to the shop, but now you're finding all these things on the digital space, and people are actually selling using their phones on either on their WhatsApp profiles or just by sending out Instagram messages. The advantage is that we always have a medic in our hotels. So there is always an in-house nurse and there is always a doctor on call. And we are seeing that there is a need to impart some very soft skills, because, you know, medicine is a highly specialized area. Not everybody just walks in and becomes a doctor. We've teamed up with the Kenya Healthcare Federation, and we've actually gone through the first round of training. How do you react to somebody choking? How do you react to probably sort of like an accident in the workplace? So when we are doing the first aid training, we are upskilling that with a bit more of information coming from the world of medicine. And that is helping us a lot. So these are the kind of trainings that we are imparting on the staff members. And hopefully by the time we get through with the pandemic, they'll have a bit more skills that they can use in the future.
So since COVID, one of the biggest conversations for us as employers has been, you know, how do you hang on to a team in a market that is sluggish? So, I mean, of course, we've had the immediate shocks was, you know, we had to let go of a bit of our team, and you've seen that even in corporate. Basically been left with back-end staff that can help manage accounts. Not to say that we don't see a bounce back, hopefully in 2021, But I think the opportunity for us as a company and where we are going is we're now looking more at conversations on affiliate sales programs. Other than only relying on your traditional sales cycles, we are also using the power of social media and network marketing to have people independently refer, say, potential buyers onto our network and also earn a commission off that. Actually, we have a provision for that on our website. If you go to www.moad.capital and click on the network link, all the details are there. You know, on the conversation of the digital space and what is happening, I think it's just a conversation of inevitability. I mean, if you look at the World Economic Forum report on artificial intelligence and the future of jobs, they estimate that by 2050, I think 65% of jobs as we know them will be wiped out. For example, in media, if you look at what they call deepfakes and how you can mimic that for media, you basically are saying that you can automate, you know, a media studio, or, you know, in real estate, you can pretty much control all your, say, sales orders algorithm on your website. So I think when I first listened to those conversations, and I think I saw a report, I saw a comment by Jack Ma where he said, I think you can't compete with a machine on your algorithmic conversations, but there is still a huge conversation in terms of just the creative space, because there are things that, you know, you still can't teach an artificial intelligence to do. The bigger opportunity going forward, I think, is in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. The thing about, you know, being in Africa or being in Kenya is that there's always an opportunity, there's always problems that you can solve. And I think that's where, even with COVID, I think you will still find opportunities to solve the issues around what people are ailing, whether it's health, whether it's accommodation, whether it's access to energy, whether it's access to education. So in that case, creating digital learning programs, or if it's in access to energy, I think one of the most amazing things I've seen in the last 6 months has been stick-on solar panels. So you just create the infrastructure and then come and lay the solar panels on top. I mean, of course, that was necessitated by a scenario where you couldn't scale solar solutions to a lower demographic without thinking about cost. So I think, yes, there are problems and there are challenges, but I think if you have an open mind and you're solving problems for that, then you'll find solutions around that. This
is in light of the huge youth unemployment rate that you've been seeing in Kenya, across sub-Saharan Africa, and even now with COVID-19, unemployment has been on the rise. So ideally, Ujana Africa has seen the need to reskill young people and basically look at which jobs have the potential to grow so that we skill accordingly to what the industry demands. At Ujana Africa, we've done a lot of evidence-based research which has been able to expose some of the gaps, and this key gap is the mismatch of skills. So when I say mismatch, is what academia is training in and what they're producing is not necessarily aligned to the demands of industry. So that mismatch of skills means that sometimes we have a large youth population that is graduating but without relevant and practical skills. So that's the first gap of skills, and a challenge that has become aggravated because of COVID-19. And when you look at industries and sectors, for example, hospitality, there's been massive disruptions with our even tourism sector in terms of aviation and just across hospitality, from the service providers, hotel industry. With social distancing, we're not really able to interact in these sectors and industries. So what has happened is, I think we need to see the jobs that need to be built in terms of post-recovery or post-COVID. We need to really have a resilient workforce. So a resilient workforce, in my opinion, is a workforce that is skilled and can support these economic challenges or shocks such as corona. So that's a first skill gap. And the second skill gap for me has always been innovation and creativity. When you look at our creative industry, even in Kenya, let's bring it home, you see kind of a languishing creative industry. And this is really because sometimes we don't have the multi-skill sets, because you only think a young person needs to be technically skilled, but you need a combination of different skills. So I think being creative is something that most of us say, oh, I'm not creative, because we think of it in terms of arts. But creative industry, I think, can really do with technical skills, even for those who are not really creative in terms of arts, people in STEM. So we need a lot of innovation. We need a lot of creativity to drive these new sectors and industries, and those are key gaps. And with COVID, I think they've been exposed to be even more lacking than we thought. And with the digital economy, I think Kenya is one of the few sub-Saharan Africa countries that has really improved in terms of seeing so many young people embracing this digital space. I think one of the things we've noted at Ujana Africa is young people are even reskilling themselves from the house. Now that we have to work from home or be remote, you notice young people are going online looking for short courses and reskilling and upskilling themselves so that they can kind of provide some of the demand that is needed in this digital space and driving the digital economy. We're looking at the emerging occupations. You see, with automation, with all this data science, we need young people who can be involved in these new emerging sectors, new occupations.
So as a result of the COVID pandemic, the job market is facing some challenges in regards to skills. The nature of the COVID pandemic meant that businesses had to rethink how they do things. First of all, some of the measures that were taken to contain the spread of the disease led to companies having to either reduce their workforce or ensure that their workforce are healthy and safe. This meant that a lot of people were then working from home. So some of the challenges therefore is first of all the loss of employment, because there are sectors that have had to significantly either shut down or scale down their operations due to the impact of COVID. These are, for example, airline businesses, the hospitality and tourism sectors, because of the limited movement around different countries. The other thing is that people have had to look at having different skill sets, because the skill set required to navigate the COVID pandemic is quite different. For example, there's been a lot of move to automation, online and virtual meetings, and also virtual type of engagement and working. So what this has meant is that a different kind of skill set is required to navigate and survive during this pandemic. The other third challenge is the cost of training and upskilling employees. Because of the pandemic, there is need also to upskill employees to have different kinds of skills also to be able to still survive in the job market during this period of time. And it also comes at a difficult time where people are torn between survival and training. So that's another challenge that industry has faced during this pandemic. As an association of manufacturers, we have done what we can to ensure that we continue to carry out relevant training through our manufacturing academy to ensure that people are able to transform their skills and continue to be relevant in the changing dynamics. The digital revolution brings also a different set of dynamics into the job market, and if you couple that also with the issue of COVID-19, it requires that we have a different kind of skill set to be able to navigate the job market going forward. For young people coming into the job market, one of the key things is that currently we cannot run away from the issues of technology and having the relevant skills around technology. That is something that is critical as we move forward. The second skill is the skill of adaptability and the ability to learn and constantly transform. That's a skill set that is required now during COVID and into the future, because there's going to be need to be constantly adapting to new circumstances in light of the global dynamics and the changes that are happening within the job market. So that's another very critical skill. The third skill I think that everyone requires in the job market currently is leadership skills. Because of the nature of work, self-leadership has become extremely critical. Because people are working from home, people are working virtually, and the ability to lead yourself, to manage your time well, and to be accountable at a personal level is going to be very critical going forward, because that accountability will be required as people navigate and start working in these new circumstances.
Link is a platform specifically created to provide livelihoods and career upskilling to informal sector workers. So we connect informal sector workers to consistent job opportunities and ensure positive outcomes. The term informal sector worker suggests that this is a worker that does not exist in, government structures or other sorts of social protections, right? This is a person that is highly susceptible to the shocks of an ecosystem. So naturally, COVID-19 has been a tremendous shock to the ecosystem, especially for those individuals in urban areas that provide local services, right? And that's exactly the population of beneficiaries on our platform, right? So whether it's a manicurist or a cleaner or a plumber or a carpenter, these are individuals that need to be in contact or communication with their customers, and that generally live month after month based on how many jobs they're able to do that month. I mean, Link is a technology-powered company. We have a really talented team of computer programmers, designers, product managers, and everything else. So all the technology that we rely on, we build ourselves. We've really seen technology as kind of an engine of growth or scale. Just as an example, if someone is coordinating 10 jobs, if someone is coordinating plumbers and there's 10 plumbing jobs a day, they need to keep track of who the customers are, how much each of those jobs cost, which worker is going to which job, who needs to be paid, whatever else. And this can be done in a spreadsheet, but once you start getting to 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs or substantially more, this becomes very difficult. And obviously technology is an incredible tool of scale or empowerment, as well as we use digital technology to kind of unlock new opportunities by looking at the data analytics of what we've collected. We can identify where there are product opportunities, where something doesn't make sense, and make really informed business decisions. The amount of young people entering the labor force each year far outpaces the amount of jobs that are created, right? So this leads to this sort of hustler culture, as we're all familiar, but as we can see, the hustler culture is the culture that will get most affected in a time of a shock like coronavirus, right? If there's no work the next day, you get no severance, you get no redundancy payments, you get no unemployment benefits or anything else. So I think there is an over-reliance on this kind of like hustler, everyone is an independent entrepreneur mentality. We're actually, this is not what some people want to do, right? And this can be really, really challenging at times. I don't know that digital is a challenge to the labor force. I think things like automation can indeed replace jobs, but hopefully create enough productivity or output that more jobs are created as a result of that, or prices are lowered as a result of that. So I think if people start thinking about it in the sense of this is a problem and we need to stop kind of this digital trend, it's like, I don't know, trying to stop a wave, like you're not going to succeed. I think the mindset needs to be, how do we make sure that this digital technology can be a source of good?
We are seeing small organizations being able to run their businesses on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, purely with no physical shop whatsoever. So you have to be very savvy, you have to be very tech savvy to be able to use these different technologies to work for you or to work for your employer. So that's the first skill that I would be able to say, the soft skill or the technology skill to be tech savvy, to take advantage of the technology or the digitization, where it's going. One of the other very key things would be, I would say, analytical skills. Because when you're working in a digital world, you're collecting a lot of data. What do you do with the data? Because it's really smart data. So somebody comes to your shop, makes a purchase. How regularly do they come? How much money do they spend? What is it that they buy? So that if you get people with analytical skills, will be able to help you work more efficiently and be able to make better use of the environment that you've got. So I can be able to send you an example, a message, giving you a very specific information that will be very relevant for you. I can tell you I have a certain specific stock that has come in because I know that is what you purchase. I can say no when you go on holiday. If I'm selling to you on holiday, I can tell you maybe 2 months before the time that I know you go on holiday that we have these offers on this holiday, and you'll be able to take advantage of offers that are available. So there is the analytical skills, because we collect a lot of data. For example, you will see microfinances. One of the requirements they have is that you feed them with your M-Pesa statements. An M-Pesa statement is literally able to give you the whole spending pattern of a person. It will tell you where does this person go, when do they go, what do they spend, how much money do they spend. So you're able, with this data, if you analyze it properly, able to tell literally or to predict the spending pattern of a person for the next so long, and know also how they spend their money. So you're able to engage with them more reasonably, more efficiently. Adaptation to new technology would be the third thing. So we have been used to the normal social media. We have been used to Facebook, Twitter, and internet. Now we are seeing a movement into where do we do online meetings, Teams and Zoom. So how quickly does a person adapt to this technology so that you can be able to offer value for your employer and do proper engagement with your clients? Because now everything, you're making your deals, you're having your meetings, you're having your presentations on these Teams and Zoom technology. How quickly are you able to learn what you can do and what you cannot do with this, so that you're able to adapt and continue with business without necessarily interrupting your workflow? So those are the three things that I would say, the three challenges that I would say the job market is facing as a result of the digital technology.